Greetings. Welcome to the Rooted Asian-American Youth Ministry Roundtable. I am your host, Terrence. I serve as the family pastor at First Chinese Baptist Church of Walnut in Southern California. I am also a mentor for the Rooted Asian-American Mentoring Program. Joining me today are three mentees from this cohort. Please tell us about yourself, where you serve, and your favorite boba shop and selection.
Yes, I can go first. I am Mimi. I serve as the youth director for the past 10 months at West Houston Christian Church. My favorite boba shop, it's actually a Vietnamese boba shop in Houston. It's called JT. I love to support my people, and my favorite selection is the peach lemongrass tea.
I'm Kashan. I'm one of the English pastors here at Edmonton Christian Community Church up here in Canada, and I've been serving roughly like 2-ish years here, primarily overseeing like the university, young adults ministry, among other things. And I don't know if there is this shop in the States, but there's this place called Preso Tea, like Preso, but they like caffeinate some of their bubble teas. So I don't know. I'm more of a coffee guy, so I prefer that kind. But yeah.
I am with you on the coffee thing, Kashan.
Amen. God made it.
And my name is Dan. I serve as the youth pastor at Christ Central of Southern California in Fullerton, California. I've been in this position for about 3 years, full-time, but of course involved in youth ministry or adjacent to it for pretty much my whole life. And normally I would do a coffee as well, but if I had to pick a boba, my guilty pleasure boba is a place called Wuxi Land. They have this thing called roasted oolong milk tea. I get a 50% sweet and full boba because, they love to put the toppings in there. So that's my go-to.
That's awesome. Man, I gotta say, I've been so excited about this month's podcast. This is something new for us. Usually, we have a group of friends who are also pastors and practitioners all over the country who are on this rotation. But then today we have these amazing people from like multiple countries, well, at least just 2 countries, that are here to be able to share their experiences with us. You see, all of us are part of the Rooted Asian-American Mentoring Cohort, and it's a 12-month experience for which we are 9 months in, so about 3/4 of the way through. Oh man, almost over. But it's been a really joyful journey because it's connected us in ways and also allowed us to encourage and build each other up in ways that, for me, has been just a joy to be a part of as the mentor. So we have 2 episodes for this month, and this first episode will take a deep dive into how this cohort has been for these 3 mentees in particular. And the next episode will feature then their insights and encouragements for the rest of you listeners, and especially those of you who are up and coming youth pastors and practitioners in their first 1 through 3 years. There's so much that they want to say to you, so we will cover that in the second episode. So coming back then for today, I want to just be able to set this up by saying that this cohort is intentionally crafted to be something that is meant to shape you through a 12-month journey. So it's not just where, it's kind of calling once in a while. It's kind of on the periphery on the side. I mean, certainly you could take it that way, but the beginning point, the starting point isn't like that. This is a commitment that you make. There's a cost for you or your church to cover. It includes a youth ministry handbook that has monthly assignments that covers specific youth ministry topics of relevance. It has the opportunity for us, but then also the requirement for us to meet monthly on Zoom in this cohort. And then finally, a one-on-one phone call that I get to have with each mentee. So this is a serious commitment for 12 months, which is why I think it has been now 9 months in, something that has shaped us and impressed us, and me in particular, as one of the people in this cohort, to really help us to grow and also to be challenged. And so I want to start with this first question, and I'll direct this to Mimi. But as I'm describing this mentorship program and its time and commitments, I want to know, why did you decide to join this program?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I was first approached with 2 offers, actually. They were starting the first women's Rooted mentorship program, but as well as the Asian-American Rooted mentorship. So I was very torn, and I really thought about it and prayed about it, which one I wanted to join. But I decided to join the Asian-American one, especially in my context. of serving in a Chinese heritage church. And as someone, I have a teaching background. So I used to be a high school biology teacher before I entered and being a youth director. And when I first entered the job, I remember I did my first teaching, my first sermon, and then the pastor I was working under, this has just happened last year. Like as he was giving me feedback, he was like, yeah, maybe you did great, but honestly, I feel like you're great and you're gifted at teaching, but I think you're still growing in being pastoral. And I think that really hit me last year. And I think when this opportunity came up, I was like, wow, I want to be humble and learning how to really minister and not to just give biblical knowledge to my youth, but how to really hit them in the heart, whether that means interacting with their parents or like even just all the struggles that comes with being Asian American. So yeah, that's why I joined the program.
Yeah, I can speak to that in my context. I think just for the reason why I decided to join was I guess a little bit multifaceted in that just beginning in ministry and in a Chinese heritage church and just starting off with people who are at least 20 or 30 years older than I am in a church, and I'm just trying to figure out the ropes of ministry and figure out how to be a pastor. And I think there's just a lot of areas in which I am confused and needing guidance. And so, hearing about this mentorship cohort, I was just very excited about it. And there was a good friend that it was in the church that also encouraged me to join this. And so I just decided, why not, join this. And it's been very rewarding.
I think rewarding is a good way to put it. Similar to Kashin, I heard about this through a friend and a couple other pastors, and just talking with them, they were very much encouraging this program, especially because it was, in this particular instance, in our cohort, was an Asian American one, and that really kind of piqued my interest because it wasn't just ministry. Yes, we're talking about that, but it's also learning about how do we minister to Asian Americans, whether they're still more immigrant, more in tune with their immigrant experience and their heritage, or maybe they're a lot more Americanized and their parents have just grown up here. It's the same kind of youth students that we're trying to reach, but yet such different contexts. So it's not just rinse and repeat, but to reach those contexts, reach those students. And then also, like, just because of this cohort, I get to hear about so many different ministry contexts. Well, as pastors and as directors, we don't get to leave our church, right? We're stuck there not stuck. That's a bad word to put it. But, we're serving faithfully every Sunday and Friday, but we don't get to hear how other churches are doing things. Or we don't get to hear or talk about, hey, this is my challenge. Oh, I have a similar thing, but I've been trying this. And so, that's how I heard about it. And then that's when I heard about, we get to discuss all these things. I was like, all right, let me sign up and let me see how it is. It's been such a joy and very rewarding.
We are thrilled to announce Rooted's new book with New Growth Press, The Jesus I Wish I Knew in High School, Asian-American Edition. Being a teenager is itself an overwhelming experience, but the struggles unique to Asian-American teenagers can often lead them to wonder if anyone truly knows what they're going through. In this book, 12 authors come alongside Asian-American students to share their own high school experiences, helping students to see how Jesus makes a difference in our unique struggles. Jesus sees them and knows them fully. These testimonies of growing up Asian American include struggles with belonging, performance pressure, fear of failure, living in an honor-shame culture, eating disorders, sexual assault, and adoption. The writers now walk faithfully with Jesus in their ethnic and cultural distinctions. These stories lift up the Asian American experience with dignity, offering representation and belonging. We hope you'll read this book and share it with the Asian American teenagers in your home or church.
Yeah, it's so great to hear from you guys on this, because really the Lord has worked in mighty ways and unexpected ways, I think, to bring this cohort in particular together. I'm so grateful for the ways in which there's been a little bit of history and conversation, with me and each of you in some ways leading into it, but then to have you come on board and the ways by which you've contributed, your experiences, your insights, and just even your friendship towards one another. That's been really great for me to see and be a part of. And just as much as, there's my role in maybe guiding or even supporting or even encouraging and teaching, I know that you guys have been a wonderful support for me as well through various seasons that I've gone through pastorally or even like family highlights or things that's been hard. And so, those for me have been really amazing testimonies of God's faithfulness and highlights for me in particular. And so here's something I want to ask you guys next. It would be, now that you've gone through 9 months of this, what would be a highlight, from this mentorship program that you would like to share with the rest of us? Something that really was impactful for you, or just something that God really did and worked, to be able to, point you, to His work in your life.
Yeah, I think something that's very special about this particular mentorship cohort is kind of something that you've been talking about earlier, Terrence, about life and kind of doing life with one another and hearing of one another's struggles and praying for one another. That to me was probably one of the biggest highlights, because each time that we get to, whether do a Zoom call or have those one-on-one phone calls, it's less so about the content is important, and it certainly has sharpened my mind to think about ministry in a more gospel-oriented, gospel-centered way. But I think more so are the relationships that have been bred through this mentorship cohort. Hearing of one another's struggles, be it someone moving or someone going through a rough time, or even the joys of certain areas of ministry. And I just think of each time we get to have those Zoom calls where we're saying, oh, I'm gonna speak to this crowd, or I'm going to have this retreat, and it's just so exciting always to hear that the Lord is using His servants across the continent in ways that we otherwise wouldn't be able to see or hear about if it were not for something like this, where we get to bounce off one another and hear of each other's personal lives and ministry lives. And so I think that's just one of the big highlights of this cohort, is to see the Lord work in the lives of each of us in our respective ministry contexts.
I definitely agree with that idea of seeing each other. I think in our ministry context, there was a point as I was thinking about a highlight. I feel like it was around week 3 or the third meeting or the fourth meeting, sometime around there, where we went from, all right, here's the content, let's discuss it and give our input. And then we went from just discussion partners to actual like ministry life partners, as you're mentioning, where we were talking about these things, but then we were sharing more about. That's when perhaps maybe in most of our ministry contexts, we started getting busier, or maybe things happen personally in our lives, and we just were able to talk content and then relate it to our lives and support one another. And there's something about having such like-minded, common experience, even though we're spread across so many different places, right? Just that community of like-minded and common goal-oriented people to talk about this content, but then also share about our lives, share about the joys of things that we have around us, or share about the joys of what the past week has been. That's been such an encouragement highlight too for me.
Yeah, I totally want to echo what Kashan and Dan said, because I feel like this is not just like a job and then it cuts off at 5. Like, I think ministry is really a lifestyle as much as our faith is part of our life. So it can get very messy, especially being ministers. We're in such public roles. So I feel like honestly, this cohort really provided like a safe place, and it made me feel like less lonely and all the insecurities and all the worries that I had. I think it was a very sweet opportunity to share, but also not just a place to rant about my youth, but like those sessions are not recorded, but I feel like it was really encouraging to like, wow, I didn't know. I mean, everyone else I'm like, in my head, I'm like, they're so cool. Like, they look at them, 2 years being a pastor. Like, it seems like they have it all together. And then when they share their worries, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it made me realize like we're all humans, even as ministers, and it really gives more perspective of like how to really, as I'm serving, that it's extremely important to allow God to pour into me first, and for us to pour into each other as ministers, and then to pour out to the people we're shepherding. Because I think, yeah, what is the highlight is like, I don't want to, give an example to the people I'm serving that like I'm asking them to be vulnerable, yet I'm never vulnerable myself. And I think, especially serving in an Asian American context, I think it's very tempting to save face and be like, yeah, ministry is great. Like, I love this job. I really, and it's such a blessing. But I think honestly, there's a lot of hardships that comes, especially in, well, my first year. So I think the highlight was to be able to be honest with that. And it's encouraging to see other people persevering and to see that the gospel is worth it, that like, what we're doing is worth it.
When you explained that, what came to mind was we pour out so much into our students. We pour out so much into volunteers and everyone else that we serve, but rarely do we get a chance to pour into youth pastors and be poured into by youth pastors. So that's such a huge blessing that I think, as you mentioned, it's just you can't find just around. You have to really look for it.
And especially when I look at this cohort, I mean, we have people from Korean American churches, Chinese churches, Canadian churches, West Coast churches. I mean, outside of a cohort like this, when will we ever have a meaningful opportunity, to sharpen one another, encourage each other? So yeah, I mean, definitely everything you guys shared have been wonderful.
Wading into youth ministry can be overwhelming. It's more overwhelming if you don't have someone to lean on and learn from. The Rooted Youth Ministry Mentorship Program was created for youth pastors in precisely this situation. The program is designed to provide both small group and individual coaching for youth ministers who are in their first 3 years of youth ministry, or youth ministers who are transitioning to a gospel-centered approach. This program is 1 year, wherein small groups of 4 to 6 youth ministers are led by one mentor in both a cohort and an individual setting through a carefully crafted 12-month curriculum designed to help you grow spiritually as an individual and as a youth minister. This comprehensive curriculum, designed by and for youth ministers, cover all facets of youth ministry, from Bible teaching, relational discipleship, equipping and training volunteers, missions, retreats, and crisis management. At the end of the program, we expect you'll be more proficient in teaching the Bible to students. You'll feel more comfortable partnering with parents, and you'll be better equipped to handle crisis situations, among other things. Additionally, when you complete the program, you'll receive a Rooted Youth Ministry certificate to affirm your commitment to join God in the work that He is doing in the lives of the students you serve.
I want us to take a look into the program a little bit more because, there is a month-to-month topic that each of you focus on. You prepare deliverables, you take the time to interact. We read scripture, we answer questions, we absorb, content, through podcasts and articles and everything else that helps us to have a clearer view of a particular subject. So with that, I would love to, ask you guys to share something, from this cohort so far that you've learned and maybe are still chewing on a little bit. But as you do, are aiming then to implement in your context. How has this cohort sharpened you in a particular area of youth ministry?
I feel like for me, the area that has sharpened the most is actually partnering with volunteers and parents. Sometimes parents you could just talk with them because they're not too far from you and they speak the same language. And sometimes they're just completely different context and they have completely different priorities. And to try to bridge that between students and parents, most time youth ministry ends up being on the students because it's called youth ministry. Mm-hmm. But then the actual emphasis of no, you need the parents involved and you need to get your volunteers not just together but in a community, and you need to invest into them. I don't do it perfectly. And I didn't realize how much more potential there was in that until perhaps we talked about it and we're dreaming about it and we're sharing just like, it's hard. It's hard to do as unmarried, like most of us unmarried without kids. Uh, it's hard as a youth pastor, but then to discuss it together and to be encouraged that way, I think that's something I'm still chewing on and trying to implement into my context.
Yeah, I have a very similar answer to Dan. It's like youth ministry is truly like more about intergenerational like ministry and how to incorporate the parents. I think what we read a chapter where we were discussing about like how youth ministry is basically like fruitless, or if you don't involve other generations, like whether that's the parents or even other young adults. And I think like how to make ministry more sustainable and how to help students continue their faith even outside of youth ministry. Because I think that's the danger of youth ministry, is that it can be isolated and it can be its own little bubble. And I think I would never want that for my youth, or even myself too, like to not be able to communicate and work with other ministries. And I think like the biggest thing that I remember was just like how to honestly let go of like logistics and more to really value the relationships. Because honestly, youth ministry, it's like I'm like literally running around with like a chicken without its head. I like we had like a water balloon fight. I'm like, oh, make sure to like not have anyone die today. And I just got this job. I can't get fired now. And so like making sure, all the planning is done, but I think realizing to pause and to like, to greet a parent, as they walk in, rather than like cleaning up, I can just let it go. And I think one of the biggest things that hit me was we were talking about like worship, and they're like, yeah, one of the biggest impacts is just like the students watching you worship, and rather than any lesson that you prepare, but like having them literally see you up in front and praising God is honestly such an impactful and memorable experience for them, more than what you teach them. So I think that really hit me, is like, yeah, my lifestyle and my relationship with God and the way I live my life, even if I don't say it, is quite impactful too.
Yeah, just to bounce back on that aspect of relationships, I think that's one of the things that makes what we've been learning so profound, because reflecting especially in this Asian American context, and in our conversations during our Zoom calls, I'm thinking a lot about how our Asian American churches, Chinese heritage, Korean heritage, and they're all very academic based, because by virtue of just the culture of needing to study and all that, and we've perhaps historically lost that relational aspect of ministry in a way that actually connects the gospel to the students' lives, and just to consider what are the implications of our study, our teaching, in a way that actually transforms lives, makes such a big difference in that it's not simply a didactic giving of information, but how do you apply that to, well, first of all, to ourselves, so that the students see that the gospel has transformed my own life before we're telling them that this is such a good news that Christ had come and died for their sins. But then how does that translate into everyday life? And that should make an impact in how eventually in ministry, the interaction with students or parents is affected by our own personal transformation because of the gospel. And so I think that aspect of teaching versus relationships, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but I think that's something that we're trying to learn to incorporate, as hopefully the Lord gives us many more years in ministry, we can learn to practice and mature in this aspect.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing. And I can't believe there's only 3 months left for this cohort, but then knowing how the Lord has grown, not only our knowledge, but then also our relationships I'm excited and grateful for the ways in which he'll continue to help us to sharpen and encourage one another. So I want to give you guys one last word. This cohort's going to end in July. We're starting a brand new cohort in August 2025. So people that are interested in joining this mentorship cohort, the next one, they're able to sign up now if they go to the Rooted Ministry website. So giving you a last word, starting with Mimi, why should somebody who may be in your shoes consider being a part of this mentorship cohort?
Yes, I think if you are a humble disciple of Christ, you should be now. You have so much to grow with. Like, yeah.
If you have no
As
pride.
much- Yeah, if you really, yeah, if you, okay, I'm being prideful in saying that. But yeah, I think honestly, like we will always be learning. We will always in the process of sanctification until our last breath. And especially if you're new, it's, yeah, so important to acknowledge that you need a support. Um, it really is a big faith step and also a good mindset to come in to ministry knowing that, hey, I need to not only depend on the Lord's help, but he provides other brothers and sisters in Christ to come alongside that. So yeah, if you want to be a good disciple, then please join.
Pulling all the Asian strings.
Guilt tripping.
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons why anyone should join this cohort is to see that indeed God's grace is sufficient. Because when I think about our cohort, all of us are virtually introverts, and maybe the vast majority of us. But to hear about each of our ministry contexts and how God still uses us who perhaps would tend towards hiding in our turtle shells, and get out there, be used by the Lord, and serve him in a way that honors him, and hearing different people in different contexts serving in a way that is thinking in a gospel-oriented way, in a context similar to your own. I think it's just extremely helpful, and helps you to reflect much on that the Lord would use a humble vessel like any of us. But like Mimi said, like, you need it because we all need help, I think, and this is beyond a mentorship aspect of this. We sharpen one another in our conversations, in the discussion of content, the material, but also again the sharing of each other's lives, and praying for one another. And I don't know about you guys, but every time that in our group chat we do get a message on just something to pray for, oftentimes than not, if I'm not in a meeting or something, I drop whatever and just pray, because I think that's just extremely helpful. And I've been very encouraged when you guys have also prayed for me in my ministry context. And so just to recognize that God's grace is sufficient, because it is, I think ministry is a spiritual battle in many ways, and to have brothers and sisters in the trenches with you is very encouraging, and it puts steel in your spine to go on ahead for the next week, for the next month of ministry. And so that's why you should consider joining this cohort.
Agreed. I mean, if I'm to be a little honest, I was actually pretty hesitant about joining the mentorship program, just because, at least in my particular context, I was entering my second year, or kind of midway through my second year, just really this as a pastor and director. And I thought I would have known, got a grasp of what it meant to do ministry. But then I realized, at least through this program, like pastors and directors, we still have to grow. Like, regardless of where you are in the beginning stages, or you've been doing this for multiple years, we all have to grow, because our people need us to grow. Our congregation needs us to grow to better reach.
Hey, y'all, thank you so much for sharing just from your hearts, and just for the ways in which you've made this cohort not just a meaningful and helpful journey in the ministry sense, but then also a personal and also enriching experience, for all of us. So until next time, I appreciate all of you. listening to Rooted Asian-American Youth Ministry Roundtable. We look forward to when we're able to chat again. Until then, may the Lord bless and keep you as we trust in the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our homes and churches. Be sure to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. Talk to you soon. Bye.